Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, digital governance is the fundamental driver of modern public sector optimization and structural national development. Now, by migrating traditional public services to integrated information and communication technology (ICT) architectures, sovereign states can systematically reduce administrative friction, mitigate corruption, and expand economic inclusion. It also evaluates how the deployment of robust digital frameworks serves as an engine for national growth while addressing the structural barriers such as infrastructure deficits and institutional inertia that hinder developing nations from capturing the full socioeconomic dividends. Tonight on NTA Tuesday Live, we'll be discussing the topic Digital Governance Prospects for National Development. But before we get down to it, let's see this report put together by correspondent Haman Jabani.
The operationalization of digital innovation in Nigerian civil service marks a significant shift towards efficiency, transparency, and improved service delivery. Spearheaded by the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, this transformation involves the deployment of integrated digital platforms aimed at modernizing administrative processes and reducing reliance on manual systems.
It also directly advances Pillar 5 of the Federal Civil Service Strategy and Implementation Plan 2021 to 2025, which prioritizes the digitalization of work processes across ministries, departments, and agencies. I'm particularly encouraged by the ministry's commitment to meeting its digital content service deliverables. Digital transformation succeeds not at go live, but through consistent, disciplined, and sustained use of the system, even on the busiest and most demanding days.
One of the key outcomes of this digital transformation is cost saving by minimizing paper usage, reducing physical storage needs, and limiting repetitive administrative procedures. Government institutions are now able to cut operational expenses significantly. In addition, digital systems reduce human fatigue by automating routine tasks such as record keeping, payroll processing, and communication workflow. This allows civil servants to focus more on strategic and value-driven responsibilities. Another critical advantage is the universality and accessibility of evolving systems. Digital platforms enable seamless interaction across ministries, departments, and agencies, regardless of location. This interconnectiveness promotes real-time data sharing, enhances coordination, and ensures uniform standards in service delivery nationwide. The Office of the Head of the Civil Service has introduced several digital platforms to drive this transformation. These include OneGov Enterprise Content Management (ECM) platform, which facilitates paperless documentation and workflow automation; the GovMail system, which provides official mail services to civil servants for secured communication; and the Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System (IPPIS) human resources model, which supports personnel management, payroll administration, and employer self-service functions. Additionally, another key tool, such as digital platform management system and online training portals, have been deployed to strengthen capacity building and accountability.
These tools are more than technology. They are the enablers of a smarter, faster, more transparent, and more secure civil service. They are not optional extras. They are the very foundation of how a modern service must operate. When we adopt them wholeheartedly, we not only elevate our personal productivity, but also strengthen the collective efficiency, credibility, and impact of the Nigerian civil service. The future of service delivery is digital. Let us lead that future together.
The operationalization of digital innovation in Nigeria's civil service is fostering a more responsive, efficient, and globally competitive public sector.
Right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guests we have here with us tonight. Uche Mbanaso is a professor of cybersecurity, computing, and artificial intelligence, heads of the computer science department. He was the immediate past executive director of the Center for Cyberspace Studies, Nasarawa State University. Kefi, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me this night.
Right. Let me also welcome to this program Mr. Emmanuel Edet, Acting Director, Regulations and Compliance, Acting Director, Regulations and Compliance Department of NIDA. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, sir.
Okay. Let me also welcome Akintayo Ayodele Bamishai, is Group Head, Research, Digital Innovation and Skills, Galaxy Backbone Limited. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right. And we are also being joined tonight by Benga Adebayo, who's Chairman, Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, Alton.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
All right. Let me also introduce tonight John Orakwe, is a cybersecurity expert. He also joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. Well, as is usual with Tuesday Live, at some point in time, it gets interactive. It means you can join in the conversation. But when it's that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedures. For now, let's go into the main issues regarding digital governance, prospects for national development. And a good place to start is to see how Nigeria can balance the need for data accessibility with privacy, cybersecurity, and protection of citizens' personal information. To start off this conversation, let me go to the Acting Director, Regulations and Compliance Department of NIDA, Emmanuel Edet Esquire.
Thank you very much, Cyril. That's quite an interesting area to start this conversation, because one of the greatest things that fuels digital technology usage for economic development is your personal data. And it's one of the pillars that actually drive economic activities, because you actually need to know who you're having transactions with. And so, sharing personal data needs to be regulated and not misused. And because of that, the federal government had established the Nigerian Data Protection Commission to deal specifically with the management and use of personal data. And the whole essence of it is exchange of personal data is inevitable in any transaction, but it's how you manage and use those personal data. And that's why government has come up with the regulations that will guide the use of personal data with the full intention of securing and protecting the integrity of a person as guaranteed by the Constitution, where the rights of privacy is sacrosanct in Nigeria. And so starting from that premise, you would talk about the sharing of that data and the protection of privacy as well as security. Mm-hmm. We cannot sacrifice privacy on the altar of security, because even though security is a very essential part of a digital space, your privacy is also a primary and fundamental requirement in order to ensure that people have the trust to use those digital technologies. And so with the Nigerian Cybercrime Act, as well as other initiatives around the cybersecurity policy and strategy, Nigeria has also developed specific rules and guidelines to ensure that when you're using digital technologies, there's also a high element of security. Apart from that, NIDA promotes standards, network standards, and security on the usage of personal data in digital space. And so I will summarize by saying that the requisite laws, regulations, and guidelines have been put in place to ensure that we use digital technologies properly, safely, and at the same time protect our personal data while using those digital technologies.
All right, and of course, as we see, more and more government services are moving online, and so it becomes imperative to know you're dealing with the government. That's even on the side of the government itself, to protect such data that are relevant for overall development. And if more government services have been accessed online, it does mean that we are all putting ourselves and our footprints out there. So the question of safety and privacy also comes in. So let's hear from you, Prof. We'll start.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very glad to see my old friend here. We have been on this journey of cybersecurity strategy and policy since 2013. We're instrumental to most of the formulation of the policies, so I'm glad to see him. Yeah, so fine and good. We have Data Protection Commission, we have regulations, and we have, all the frameworks. But what we need to factor in is where does they sit in, when you're talking of data protection, where do they sit? So countries are moving from reactive to proactive cybersecurity, because in as much as we have these regulations, they are more of reactive than proactive. So countries are moving into what we call digital sovereignty. And that digital sovereignty entails data sovereignty. So because you have where you have your data sitting. I remember those days when we were talking together. We started championing as far back as 2013 about data localization. I'm glad he's here. And there was a lot of issues, people talking about, oh, we cannot have data localization, it's going to... But we're coming back to that today, because data sovereignty, data is the king, data is the new currency. Artificial intelligence today depends on data. So how you manage your data is very, very essential for your data-driven governance. If you don't manage your data, data is one of the pillars. If you don't manage your data very well, in terms of structure, in terms of integrity, in terms of consistency, so you have data that are in silos. And I also remember far back when Professor Ngai was Director General of NIDA, we had a committee to actually fashion national database for the country, which a lot of work was done, but it never saw the light of the day. As far back as 2012, thereabout. And all this, we are talking about data. Data is the king. And so we need to move away from reactive measures now to proactive measures, looking at how do we safeguard our data. Because when you are just looking at regulatory and all that compliance and all that, what you are looking at is after incident has happened, you find those who breach the data. But the data has already been gone, and perhaps sometimes the penalty you give those people may not be commensurate to the damage that has been done. So we'll have to start moving from just mere regulation to how do we actually protect our data in terms of technical terms.
Okay, so much the issues are coming out now, and then we'll take them as they come. But let's come to the Group Head, Research, Digital Innovation and Skills of Galaxy Backbone Limited, Akitayo Delibamishai. Let's hear you on this matter of protection.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. And it's a great conversation to actually weigh into. But I would like to just come at it from the point of view of how government agencies, how we can use our data, and how we can ensure that while the data is being put together, let me use that word loosely, or use that term loosely, while data is being put together or either being collected by the agencies, we are able to ensure safety and ensure that the rights of all those who are involved in the value chain, are all met. And Emmanuel said something very critical. There's been quite a lot of guidelines, instruments that have been put in place, by the different regulatory entities that are involved. You've mentioned the NDPC, the NEDA, the Office of the National Security Advisor. There are different entities, that actually have been mandated and have actually put out instruments which, if those instruments are adhered to, a lot of the issues around privacy, I'll say for the purpose of this conversation, 75, 80, 85% of those issues would actually be taken care of. And whatever safety concerns people have will be mitigated. So part of what we need to do before we even start talking about how we react is at the point of building out of systems, of applications by the user entities, whether they are government agencies or the private sector. We need to ensure that they build with all the guidelines in mind. So when they build that way, we would have immediately taken care of the privacy issues. We would have immediately taken care of the data management issues. So there's a whole lot that needs that in terms of responsible behavior that we need to now publicize, educate stakeholder, community, and ecosystem on, so that when there's adherence to a lot of those guidelines, would actually be safe. Like somebody talked about the safeguards, that you don't build and layer safeguards on your building. When you're building a bridge, for example, you don't just build a bridge that, I want to build a bridge that cars can just drive on. No, you build a bridge in the building, you put safeguards so that cars cannot just fall by the side. In the same way, as people are building, as entities are building, whether they are government agencies, whether they're private sector institutions, they need to build with all those safeguards in place. And you find out that a lot of the issues we're talking about would actually have been mitigated.
So it's a good thing that we have the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, Alton. It's a good thing we have him with us on this conversation. And he's in Lagos, but he's joining us via Zoom. And so we can hear your opening comments on this, because you're key to all of this as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just must clarify for the purpose of the public, the understanding of the public, that the data we are talking about here is not the transport access you get from your device to your network. I think it's important to put that clarification in place so that we're not just talking to ourselves as experts.
Yes,
so the data we're talking about are information about us, our biometric, our facial, our date of birth, place of work, kind of faith that we subscribe to, and the rest of them. So it's the information about us and about our identity that we're talking about.
Yes.
And what that means is that as data custodians of data, we owe a moral duty to those who provide their data to us to ensure that they are not only secure, but they are used and applied in ways that are responsible and that protect the rights of individuals whose data is held by us. And I must say that there are regulations that we have to do. I'm glad that the experts on the call have alluded to the same thing. Today, our primary means of identification is the national identity number, which basically contains all information about us as individuals. Unfortunately, when we go to some other agencies, they still tend to collect this information for the purpose of their own register. But the fact remains that the primary means of identification to all of us today is our national identification number, which is being managed by the National Identity Management Commission of Nigeria. And that said, they have the duty to ensure that when information is captured by an individual, it is protected, it's applied in the right way, and where there are compromises, there are consequences for such use and application. For us as network operators, we guarantee integrity of data that is held by us. We also guarantee the use of those data. Not only do we ensure that they are secured and protected, we also ensure that they are not compromised in ways that can impact on lives of citizens and the commerce and the business that we do. And above all, today the strength of our digital economy rests on the integrity of our national database. And so, as custodians of data, we must continue to ensure that we guarantee safe use of this information We must ensure that we guarantee the right application of this information, and we must give that protection to the public, such that whenever and however it is so required of us, the integrity of the information we hold in our hands is not compromised.
Well, I'll just stay with you a moment longer. It's good when you talk about the responsibility of those who are custodians of data. Good you talked about responsibility, because if you recall, just a few years ago, there was a situation that could have been described then as bedlam, where people were harvesting data of those who wanted to access services all across board. And a lot of Nigerians were worried about that can they trust particularly telecommunications companies to be responsible in safekeeping this data, the biometrics and everything that they collected almost on a monthly basis, if you recall.
Yeah, I do recall, and I must say, as network operators, you will recall before the NIN-SIM integration that we had, where you have to harmonize your SIM record with your NIN record. We as network operators had larger information than was held by the Identity Management Commission at that time. Because as an industry, we have put in place a need to identify who is on the various networks. And we recall that until we had that exercise of NIN-SIM integration, the National Identity Management Commission struggled a lot regarding the data. And what I'm therefore saying is that we have been like the lead agency that collected this information. We haven't had any case of compromise or misuse of this data. We have handed this over to the Identity Commission when we did the NIN registration. Until today, the success that's been recorded by that commission is traceable in part to the information collected by network operators, and the security and safety of the data they hold today. I will say to a large extent, traceable to the fact that network operators never compromise the use of that data. Today we talk about financial technology, where more or less you can say that the digital services are more or less synonymous with money today. If you want to ask for somebody's bank account, you can simply ask for the person's more digital services. That is all traceable to the integrity of the information that we have gathered as network operators. And we are proud to say as an industry that we haven't had any case of data breach, and we will not under any circumstances compromise data that's been held by us as responsible custodians of public information.
All right, thank you. We'll return to other issues, but let's also go now to John Orakwe, the cybersecurity expert, who also joins us via Zoom from Lagos. And yes, there you are. Well, you've listened to the opening comments of the other discussants. Perhaps that places you in good stead to contribute to this matter of safety.
Well, yes, so I'll piggyback on something that Prof said earlier about how privacy and accessibility of data is now moving from the reactive end to being proactive. What that simply means is that the people who are responsible for privacy, for ensuring privacy of data sets, and also for guaranteeing that accessibility is only given to those who have access to the data, have to do it in such a way that they are AI native. And what that means is that all the bad actors who try to breach all the government systems and all the databases that we cherish, all of them now use AI systems. What that means is that an attack that would typically take 80 people to execute before, 2 persons in a room working with AI agents can now execute that attack. So that's something that we need to take cognizance of. So an instance would be the recent breach of the Corporate Affairs Commission. They took about 750 gigabytes of data, 25 million files were stolen. What happened in that case, the people who were responsible by storage are people, a group of people who use AI agents to execute their attacks. And more people like this are coming up. So what even the Central Bank of Nigeria has recommended in some of their recent memos is that the banks adopt an AI native approach to cybersecurity. And I think that's something that has to extend to government systems, because the people out there who want these precious data sets are working with systems that are now superhuman in some sense. And then to what the NICTA executive said, I do think that a lot of these data sets that these people try to steal from us. One of the reasons why they are so successful is because there's no proper classification of the data that we have within, the MDAs. So if there's proper classification, we know what data is public and low risk, which data is private and confidential, and which one is critical national data. So if we have a proper classification framework, and I think that by October of this year, there's a new framework that would come up that will help us classify all the data we have properly. So once we have a proper classification of all the data that we have, it becomes easier to then know how to store these different data, right? So that for every critical national data that we have, is stored in the most secure way possible. Same thing with the private and confidential, government data, and then public and low risk data can, be stored in the regular way that we are currently storing our data sets. So that's what I'll say to this opening conversation about privacy and access.
All right. You see, it's just taking it from there. What would have taken a group of people to do, just one individual can now do that. And if you think about it, with recent happenings in advanced countries with advanced technologies, look at the U.S., the recent stories about how a city's water system was yes, almost hijacked, and people had to resort to the old ways of boiling water because someone had hacked into the systems. And you hear about that, and you wonder, what is the position in Nigeria?
Well, that's a very interesting analogy. The truth about it is that the use of technology comes with certain risk, and that's not something we can deny. But what we can say is that those risks can be mitigated, and this is what we are focusing on in NIDA as well as in collaboration with other regulators. There are lots of conversations around digital sovereignty, conversations around how to ensure that your personal data is protected, conversations how to ensure that you have minimum security standards, especially in government systems. And NIDA is working with those regulators, working with the various government agencies, and Galaxy Backbone provides some of those services to ensure that your data is adequately secured and protected. Now, on various levels, we have seen a lot of challenges when it comes to actual awareness. And that's where I think we should pause a bit. Most of the vulnerabilities you can actually identify, a lot of them are not strictly technical. There's always a human factor.
Okay.
And there's also a problem of social engineering as well. And so it's not just about the regulations, it's not just about the technology. There's also the human elements which needs to be addressed, because most of those penetrations and vulnerabilities take advantage of the human factor and use it very, very well in breaching that. As for us in NIDA, I think the last speaker the cybersecurity expert, I didn't get his name.
Okay, that's
Orakwe mentioned something around data classification. We've been working on that for a while, and in fact, on the 4th of August, our DG signed 3 instruments that had to do with cloud sovereignty in Nigeria. And a component of those instruments includes data classification, which will tell you the level of security you're supposed to associate with different kinds of data, depending on their sensitivity. And then, of course, again, we talked about localization. Localization is another important aspect.
Yes, because the straightforward thing here is, speaking of localization, let's just localize it. Does it make it safer?
Yes.
Essentially?
Technically, it doesn't make much difference. The only thing there is that once you have your data local, you have a stronger control over such data. The technology experts will tell you that you need to mirror your sites in different places so that you can ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability at the end of the day in case one site goes down and the others will keep running. But what we are focusing on here is not just physical control, but logical control as well, because this helps in business practices. And I know I and Prof have disagreed on that in a lot of
That's why I pointed it down. All right, I'm going to come back to
Okay.
in a lot of fora. But the interesting thing is that we are rolling out these regulations and guidelines. We are rolling out these technical standards with an intention to ensure that we have the barest minimum when it comes to security. And then we are working alongside with the ministries, departments, and agencies, not only to educate them, but also to ensure that in the procurement process, security is a default in terms of storage and management of data.
All right. In addition to the conversations in the studio and with our guests who are joining us via Zoom, we also have a number of reports that speak to the issue, and we'll start off with this one from Lagos.
From procurement and revenue collection to budgeting and other government transactions, digital platforms are gradually replacing manual processes and reducing the number of human interactions required. Electronic records, according to this business development analyst, create a trail that can make transactions easier to monitor, while automated processes can reduce discretionary intervention and limit opportunities for manipulation.
A very good case study is the area of the, I would say the passport, international passport processing with regards to the Nigerian immigration services. In prior years, before 2023, there used to be, tortuous periods of trying to get government, the Nigerian immigration service to just procure an international passport. It could take up to 2 months, sometimes at some point it could even take up to 6 months just to be captured. But in the last 3 years, these reforms have really affected and helped the process.
From the comfort of your home today, as a taxpayer, you can register, you can make your payment, you can transact effortlessly with tax authority. This is not comparable to what we used to experience in the past.
In public procurement, experts say the adoption of digital platforms is creating opportunities for greater transparency by making procurement processes and information more accessible to stakeholders and reducing the scope for human interference.
From the introduction of the procurement platform via the Bureau of Public Procurement, registration of contractors, all of those has even helped in streamlining the procurement governance system in Nigeria. So everybody gets to register on that platform. You know who is who. You have the details at every time when procurement is open to the public.
As more public transactions move online, the test is whether technology will deliver not only faster services, but greater transparency, accountability, and public confidence in government.
The world is fast moving from global village to a hamlet due to advancement in technology. In line with the trend, Nigerian government in July 2024 keyed into the paradigm shift, adopting the National Digital Economy and E-Governance Bill. The bill creates a unified legal framework for Nigeria digital space. It ensures legal validity to electronic transactions and signatures, mandates paperless digital public services across government agencies, and strengthens online consumer protection, data privacy, and cyber security. Digital economy, which entails an economic system anchored on digital technologies such as the internet, artificial intelligence, blockchain, e-commerce, amongst others, helps reduce operational costs and enhance efficiency, making the business environment more appealing.
There is access to the global market. You'll be in your bedroom and you have a word to sell. You sell it to the whole world. Just press a button and you are in the center of the market.
In salary payments, before you have to do payrolling by hand. Now you do it online. File is now configured into system, filing system, computerized filing system.
It helps us communicate fast, interact with foreigners, people that we don't even expect to see in the digital aspect. in the world, not just in Nigeria.
Digital economy optimizes corporate output, creates job opportunities, pulls micro enterprises out of the informal sector, and expands regional consumer bases to attract foreign investment and increase the country's gross domestic product. It is the view of many that with the advancement of technology, digital transformation is the key as it gives room for transparency and ease of doing business.
All right, back here in the studio, Prof, we were going to weigh in on the matter of localization, and now you have that chance.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's look at this data localization because there's a lot of misconception about data localization. Data localization go far beyond where the data is sitting. First of all, what we mean by data localization is governance. You must govern your data totally. The structure of your data, the integrity of your data, the trust of your data must 100% governed. What do we mean by governed? Controlled, if you want to use that simple term. For instance, in China, data of Chinese citizens doesn't go out of China's sovereignty. And when we mean data sovereignty, it doesn't mean it must locally be in Nigeria, but it must be where you have 100% control. So if we're building data centers and we're trying to build a data center in the sense that we want a kind of distributed infrastructure, like what you have Google. When you search Google, you get it within a few seconds. It doesn't mean that the data center they're using reside only in America. No. One of their data centers, big data center, is in Cape Town. But they govern that data 100%. Means there is no foreign interference. So when we mean data localization, it means localizing your data where you govern your data 100%. And like my friend was asking, if you put it physically here, how can somebody in Ghana access it? But the one you're accessing in US is put physically in the US. So that does not suffice. What is very important is that data sovereignty. You know, when we started, I talked about digital governance and data sovereignty. So it means controlling your data 100%. Now, for instance, we're talking of NIM, like Orakwe said, about classification. Now, when you look at our personal attributes, which ones are more sensitive? Our NIM is in the public domain. Mm-hmm. Your NIM is in the public domain. Your telephone is in the public domain. And these two attributes are very, very important. If you see your passport today, your name is there. And your telephone number is also there. With these two attributes, a hacker can cause a harm. If you go to MTN today to go and do any transaction, the first thing they ask is your name. And you fill a paper. And after then, the paper is put in a dustbin. So we need to begin to be serious about data governance. It is very, very important.
All right. So localization may not necessarily translate to being more secure or safer without governance, the governance you talked about.
Yes, the governance is very, very important.
Well, let's hear where you are on that.
Thank you very much. So it gets very interesting. Actually getting hot in the studio.
Sorry.
Really,
sorry about that.
And this still comes back to some of the more foundational issues, which is what Emmanuel mentioned at the beginning, which is in terms of behavior. You know, so for example, regarding the scenario that Prof just described, whereby data is being collected. First of all, it's being collected manually in some cases, where a citizen walks into some center, you know, and he enters his name and phone number. Those are two vital pieces of vital data sets that can actually, if it gets into the wrong hands, someone can use to actually access key information about that person. But there are regulations as to how this kind of data should be collected in the first place by any entity. There are guidelines that have been stated that state this is how you should collect this data, or this is how you should treat this data in one way, form, shade, or manner. So it comes back to the fact that how much of these regulations are we aware of? Do we know? Then how much are we paying attention to adhere to these standards and these guidelines? Because the truth is that if we do, we will significantly minimize the risks that we expose ourselves to. A lot of it is really based on human failures or non-adherence to some of these guidelines. So technology is not the first thing. It really comes down. We talk about people, process, and technology. Technology is really at the back. Either it works or it doesn't work. Processes that you put in place, if you align with them, then you go smoothly. But it's the people factor that you always find out that's where you have the niggling issues that do come up. So it still comes back to the fact that, yes, some of these things have been envisaged. I mean, we've been talking about 13 years since 2013, talking about data management. A lot has been said and guidelines have been put in place. How much private sector, public sector, government agencies, how much are we adhering to some of those things? Are we going to have issues? Most definitely, yes. But we will be able to minimize significantly a lot of those issues if we pay attention to the guidelines that have been put in place. And it's important because that's the behavior that will guide us in the right direction with regards to data privacy, and ensuring that our data assets are properly kept in place. Then, when it comes to issue of data localization, the reality is that there are different sides to that conversation. There's the privacy side. There is also the part of economic development and prosperity. Data, like everybody says, is the new oil. It is the new oil. How are you able to translate the data that is available to you into work, into throughput, into prosperity for your people? Because part of the reason why we're saying, okay, data, look out for not having your data under someone else's governance is because in their own climes, data is what they are using to create the new jobs, the future of work that we talk about, all the new job roles that are coming up every day, the remote work that is being done by Gen Zs and all that, is because there's a whole lot of governance that they've put on their data and they've made it available to their citizens. So that is a key part of where we need to understand this issue of data localization. It's the platform for tomorrow's prosperity. How do we ensure that we are able to create that platform for ourselves, for our citizens, as we go forward?
Because the next question will be the institutional capacity. Currently, do we have that?
So, do we have institutional capacity? I'll translate it into the Gen Z way. The Gen Z, they tell you that, look, you asked me for 3 years of experience, but have you given me the platform to build the experience in the first place? So there is some level of institutional capacity. We don't know it all, but the reality is that are we willing to start out our journey? Because we need to know where we are as a nation on this journey with regard to digital economy. Where are we? And what are we able to do even here, even now? And if we're able to start our journey, we can actually record our progress and chart our progress as a people, particularly on this digital economy. Because if there's any area where we actually have the opportunity to leap, we flog the term leapfrog, but to actually leap forward, it's in the area of digital economy. It is. So we need to look at it. There are different sides we need to, different lenses we need to use, when we're doing this conversation.
Well, Chairman Alton, let's bring you in here. He has just mentioned what role the private sector can play or does play in all of this. And you are very confident that, you of course belong to the private sector, you are very confident that with whatever you had more than even the government institution that now controls that data. You seem to be very confident that so far as you're concerned, the private sector has done a good job in that.
I think I'd like to start by making a clarification on an analogy that Prof gave during his intervention, and that's that you go to a working center, they collect your number on a piece of paper, your phone number, your name on a piece of paper, and we don't even know what happens to it. As network operators, we are aware about the sensitivity of subscriber information, whether provided physically or digitally. And so the processes to achieve those information is used, and all those papers that disposed is highly controlled. And I must say that there are no fears in that regard. Citizens are not as exposed with us as they are with, for example, a number of young Nigerians who have applied for jobs at the federal government. They've submitted a curriculum vitae to the federal ministry, and after a period of time, it's disposed in a way that when you go to the woman that is selling roasted plantain behind his federal secretariat, the paper used in wrapping that plantain is the CV or the NYC certificate of a Nigerian who have applied for a job in the federal government secretariat. That's a lot more exposing situation than it is in the instance that Prof has given. And therefore, in that regard, we all have obligation to not only protect our data, but also to ensure that people's information, by whatever means we have access to it, is well protected and well secured. On the role of the private sector, basically, we live on data. We live on data. I don't mean data by bandwidth of gigabytes of what you burn. We live on data as information of subscribers, traffic pattern, call pattern, direction of call, application, usage of devices on various networks and other. And we are not unaware about the magnitude of responsibility and obligation that we have in safe use of those information. About institutional capacity, we do have, and as you are aware, Nigeria has one of the largest call centers in the sub-region. We have one of the highest number of submarine cables landing on our shores that connects us to the international community, international network, and all of that. So in terms of capacity, we are building capacity that is required not only to host data locally, but also to ensure that information exchange between local companies and government and citizens is adequately is processed in reasonable time. So in terms of building capacity to manage, to hold, to host, and to process citizens' data in the country, we are building that capacity. We are growing significantly. So we thank the regulators for the work that they do, because we can only do this if the regulatory environment is stable and is constant. So we must credit NITA, we must give credit to our NCC, we must give credit to NIMSI and all other agencies that are the data protection agency and all of those that are responsible for data management. So I think it's a journey. We started quite well and we're on the right path, we're on the right course, I suppose so.
Okay. John Orakwe, yes. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, thank you. So, I mean, on localization, I think the example I will just reference again is something I said earlier. The CAC hack, all 750 gig of data that was stolen is resident here in Nigeria. So
Right.
the fact that the data is here doesn't mean that
It's
it's
safer.
protected against. It's protected from the people who are trying to steal the data. And then another thing that I will also talk about is the fact that there's this concentrational risk that I don't think enough people are paying attention to, because if you check all the data centers you have in the country, I think about 23 of them are in Lagos, 3 in Abuja, 1 in Kano, 1 in another state. I can't quite recall now. So if we're saying data is the new oil, and we're saying that these intelligence factories, so to speak, is how the new world of work is going to function. I think it's important that we distribute these data centers. So if Akwa Ibom and a few other coastal states can have data centers feeding Nigerian businesses, it's a much better thing to do, especially with respect to localization, than having all of them here in Lagos. I know there are technical challenges to siting these data centers elsewhere, but it is a very important consideration. And I say this because the CBN has mandated all transactional data to be processed locally by 1st of January 2027. So there's a lot of FDI pouring into the data space at this point in time. So I'm just saying this so that we look at that constitutional risk. People who are building these centers manage that constitutional risk and ensure that many more states are represented in the data centers that are present there.
All right, back here in Abuja's studio, let's return to Emmanuel Edit. And how can Nigeria turn government data into an asset that drives policy, innovation, and economic growth, not just storage, not just storing it?
That's a very interesting question. Overall, we have been doing that. First of all, from NIDA's perspective, one of the things that we have come up with is what we call our regulatory intelligence framework, which is basically avoiding developing armchair policies. We deal with policies based on evidence, and you get that evidence from data that you gather through interactions and through studies, especially those from the Bureau of Statistics. where we have a few collaborations to have certain type of data sets that will help in government planning. That's one of the things we've done. Over the years, actually translating data into economic benefits and development has meant that government has moved radically from just developing those policies to creating initiative based on the data gathered as a result of research into the result of those policies that we have developed over the years. And the ICT sector has grown consistently for almost about 30 quarters now, for some time, and which shows you that that growth has been facilitated by government deliberately targeting specific areas where government has, through research, determined those areas to be triggers for economic development. So, for example, you talked about institutional capacity. We are targeting, from the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, we are targeting digital literacy of close to about 90% by the year 2030. And one of the arguments has been that there is no normal non-digital literacy. And we've always said that both of them can run side by side. And that's why the National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics has come up with this large language model that helps interpret English into our local languages, which will help support digital literacy growth. We've also dealt with 3 Million Tech Talents Initiative, which is basically designed to give you that higher end capacity. So as a whole, government policies has been deliberate and targeted based on evidence available to address not only the economic issues, but also address the security issues. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we signed some cloud documents which basically addresses the issue around sovereignty, which Prof has mentioned all along. And the idea is that we want to ensure that foreign direct investment in Nigeria is predicated upon the needs of Nigeria and the possibility of exporting those services across the African corridor and the African continent as a whole. So we research deliberately into the effect of technology, especially in the development of our local economy, and how our policies can actually trigger a continuous growth and continuous development. Of course, remote work, he talked about remote work as well, which is one of those indices that connectivity, the Project Bridge seeks to also promote 90,000 kilometers of fiber across the country. So with all these policies promoting access, promoting capacity, and also promoting safety, the government is well poised to ensure that Nigeria benefits and is not just digital technologies. As digital technologies has become a core infrastructure for economic development. And that's where we feel that, or we know based on evidence, that we can focus to ensure that Nigeria becomes one of those high-end economies in the near future.
Prof, when you watch from the outside, what do you see?
Well, from the outside, like what my very good friend said, a lot has been done in the country, there's no doubt about that. But the missing gap is harmonization and creating awareness so that people will be very aware and ensuring that almost all our services are digitalized. Like if you come to FCT, AMAC data is not digitalized. Citizens don't really know what AMAC, for instance, is doing, what tax they are collecting. In AMAC here, you pay, I mean in Abuja here, you pay AMAC tax, you pay FCT tax, you pay government tax. And most of the citizens are not aware of how does this tax intersect. So a lot has been done. The infrastructure, to a certain extent, is there. But we need to begin to harmonize. For instance, I would want where a citizen go to any hospital, nobody is asking you to register. You just give the person your telephone number, which is unique, a telephone number that is tied to your name, and then your data is pulled out and then integrated with health services. You go to any services, that is how it is done almost everywhere, developing countries and even developed countries. So we need to harmonize our data, because when you are talking about AI today, AI relies more on data. And the data you feed to AI is as good as the result the AI will give you. And that comes to the extent we're also talking about this data sovereignty. You wanted to ask more
yes, you speak of that, and what comes to my mind is even in gathering the data. For instance, would it surprise you that even as we speak, you have 15-year-olds, 10-year-olds who do not have a birth certificate because there hasn't been a registration of birth, and yet there is an agency that should record every birth.
Yes. So that is interesting. And I remember some times ago in 2019, we had a conference about election infrastructure, and that. And one of the recommendations was, unbundling INEC in such a way that INEC does not deal with voters registration. We have a National Population Commission, which by nature is their job. They know when people die. They should know, presumably, they should know when people die and when people are born. And so in the UK, for instance, when you reach age of voting, you see your voting card in your doorstep. So you don't need, every year we're spending a lot of money doing voters registration and registration and that. When National Population Commission would have happened this aspect, unbundle it in such a way. So we need to harmonize our data. We need to harmonize the ways we do things and save cost.
All right. Yes.
Right. It gets more interesting, right? So just to speak to some of the functions, and it's interesting, it still comes back to adherence to some of the policy instruments and the mandate of the agencies that have been created. So for example, in the data domain in this country, there are two entities that are responsible for foundational data. One is the National Identity Management Commission for your identity number. The second is Nigerian Population Commission, and they actually give you an identity at birth. So those two entities. Now, your NIN also, at birth, you get a NIN based on the new act of NIMC. I mean, all that has been done, so that the primary and foundational identity for any citizen is your NIN. So, but when it comes to capturing what we call foundational identity, those are the two entities that are responsible. Now, every other entity that has to have your identity for whatever purpose. So, for example, you're a driver and you need a driver's license. So the Federal Road Safety Commission is responsible for your identification as a driver. They piggyback, let me use that term, they should piggyback off your name. And they create...
Not make you feel all those faults all over again.
But you see, a lot. So, but we cannot just speak without being cognizant of what had happened before. A lot had transpired before we now started creating the kind of instruments that will lead to this harmonization. I was on a harmonization committee, whereby we're looking at identity management, over the years. And the truth is that you cannot discountenance what had been done with BVN over the years, which preceded a lot of the work that now happened with identity management. You cannot discountenance what road safety had done or immigration. So a lot of harmonization has happened, and we're actually getting there. That's the truth. We're actually getting there. Now, I mean, there are over 136 million NINs, unique NINs that have been captured that are being used as we speak today, and more are being captured. We're going to 250. But where I want to land my plane right now is the fact that all that has been happening, right? What will make us really appreciate the level of work that has been done is where we now scale. So you see that I've mentioned a number of agencies that have pockets of their activities, digitalized, as it were. So, for example, we all know that for immigration, for your passport, that's a digitalized process. But there are several hundreds of other services that the immigration service offers that have not yet been digitalized, which you still need to go into immigration, for example. I mean, pardon me for mentioning, I'm just using it as an example, that you need to go into that agency to go and get that particular service, and several other entities like that. But where we now scale and where every single service that is offered to the public or to the business is available, publicly, digitally. That's when we now begin to see the power of the existing assets and artifacts that have actually been put in place by government, and then the policies now begin to make sense. So it's really about now being deliberate about scaling, and that's what some of the instruments that are now coming out, the revised NIMC Act, some of the instruments that NIDA is signing. When we now begin to adhere, we now begin to see the value of all the work that has been done and how it begins to transform our economy as a whole.
At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open. It means you can join in the conversation in the studio, and we'll also come to you with another of our reports. And of course, our guests are still with us, so stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Not to wonder about it. Of course, the arguments and the various sides to the issues went on even behind the scenes while we were on break. It tells you how vibrant this discussion has been. But this is a segment where you have an opportunity to join in the conversation. The numbers to call will be on your screens. You can take advantage of those. We say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in and your call gets through to the studio, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And one way to know your call has been passed through, so you'll see your name on screen. It tells you your call is through. So once you see your name on screen, you go ahead with your question or your comment. We encourage you to go straight to the point. We ask you not to bother too much about greetings. Just a simple hello would do. And keep it short and coming so that others can also get on the platform and air their views. We start off with another of our reports. This one is from Kanu.
Digital technology is changing how Nigerians work, do business and access services, helping to cut costs, save time and reduce manual effort. Government is also expanding digital systems to make public services faster, more accessible and more efficient.
The agency rendered so many services. Everything is being digitalized from end to end. Before us, they were making less than 50 million a month. But sometime now, here in this agency, we used to make up to 750 million a month. So you can see the increment is in geometric progression.
Beyond public services, digital tools are transforming the way businesses operate.
We gain more customers than before that we are manual. Why? Because even the customers are satisfied. For example, the way you place your order is easier than manual. There is less error. And our digitization doesn't just stay in our local operations. We are also broadening it to be e-commerce.
But challenges remain, particularly in making these services affordable, accessible and useful to more Nigerians.
No matter how you try to make things better, there are people that are conservative and they are very resistant to changes. Another thing is, if you are going online, there is a risk of hackers, so you need strong cyber security.
Across the economy, technology is creating new opportunities for entrepreneurship, jobs and investment, positioning the digital economy as a potential driver of economic growth.
Digital economy is something that will create more jobs. If you look at the number of POS that are opening now, and again, digital economy has helped in formalizing the informal sector of the Nigerian economy, because our people, even those who are in rural areas, they use their phones in making transactions.
For these gains to be sustained, stakeholders say Nigeria must strengthen its digital infrastructure and ecosystem, ensuring that more people and businesses can participate in the digital economy.
All right, back here in the studio, let's go over to John Orakwe, the cybersecurity expert. And if you're with us, this next matter is about ensuring balancing openness for transparency with restrictions for national security. What would you suggest? Yes, I need. Yeah.
So what I would suggest is, again, back to the example I spoke about earlier. We only found out that the CSE was hacked because Byte to Breach, that's the group responsible, said that they took this many number of documents, and they were asking for certain things, right? So they wanted some financial incentives to not release the documents to the public internet. So I do think that one of the practices that we have to really understand is that transparency is a security asset. So whenever there's a breach, one of the first things that anyone who is in charge of that data, I'm assuming that they are, let's say, data protection officers in all the MDAs within the country. So whenever there's a breach, one of the first things that anyone must do is to report that breach, because when systems are audited in public,
Oh dear.
around the
Okay.
systems, yeah, then it's a lot more difficult to even trace the amount of damage that's been done before before the bad actors finally realize their objective for for the hack.
All right. Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, if you're with us.
Yes, I am here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, let's hear you on balancing openness, transparency with the restrictions for national security.
I think we all need to build trust in our digital system. We need to build trust. And as players in that space, we trust the information that they put in our hands. We must ensure that we work together as stakeholders. For example, if you go to the road safety and you capture your data, you go to the bank, you capture your data, you go to NTA, you capture your data, people start to ask questions, why do I have to do it so many times, and who among you should I trust with the integrity of the information that I give to you? So as said before, we need to work together, but again, we must build the integrity of information that we collect so that those who put this in our hands will not have any doubt as to how secure or how safe it is. The second thing that we all must do is there has to be consequences when there are issues of identified compromise of data. There should be consequences, and they should be as severe as it should be. Today, you hear in the developed countries that people are being charged for what is called identity theft, and the penalty there is quite severe. So in our space as well, we must begin to identify those who are the bad actors, who are the non-state actors doing things that are against the interests of the state and against individuals, and we must bring consequence to them. This is about the only way by which people will be mindful about what they do with this information if by any way it comes into their hands. The third thing that I would like to talk about is in the security of what we have done with additional protection for what we have. Our public infrastructure is as best as it can be. We must continue to build redundancy. As said, a lot of data centers are in Lagos area. We must build redundancy across the country. We must not be unmindful about the need for transport to those interlands. And so also the access to those interland needs to be built and they need to be secured. So by this, we'll be able to build a robust national system that is not only reliable, but it's also well protected in the event that anything that's to the contrary do happen to it. These are my views on that.
Well, twice or three times now there's been talk about the national data centers and where they're located. And this will make you wonder about cloud infrastructure, disaster recovery systems to prevent loss. We're wondering about that now. Can anyone provide a background to this?
Yes. Thank you. So without doubt, if we're going to talk about a digital economy, there's some basic underlying infrastructure that needs to be in place. I mean, and amongst those is your data center capacity as a country. Like John did mention, there is in-country capacity in terms of presence of data centers in the country, but there's a huge concentration in Lagos, I mean, which is understandable given the level of commerce and all of that around that space. However, one of the things which the government did when it was setting up Galaxy Backbone was to look at how we could actually bring such capacity up country, as it were. And today, as we speak, Galaxy Backbone has built and deployed and operates a Tier 3 data center in Abuja and a Tier 4 data center in Kano. Now, these two locations are linked directly on a high-speed national fiber optic backbone, and they're also connected to the coast, whereby we can bring up capacity from the ocean fiber optic landing cable, which lands at right there. So the reality is this: that's just a drop in the ocean, as it were, in terms of capacity that is required. But that begins to set the tone for what is possible, amongst other data center requirements. So as we speak today, there's backup that is being done actively from that Abuja location to the Kano location. And actually, we have customers who are actually able to take capacity from their Lagos operations and bring up country. So we are on a journey. I think it was Mr. Adebayo that did mention the fact that we are on a journey. And we need to recognize the fact that, yes, it may not be the same way we want to be, or we see the likes of Estonia and other countries that are, so fired up in terms of their digital maturity. However, we are actually making progress, and it's now a matter of how quickly can we scale, and to what level can we actually begin to deploy services.
Speaking of which, we would say the journey that we embarked on in terms of harmonization, how far have we gone with that? Because twice we've had issues of harmonization. The first time, all this data captured all around was supposed to have been harmonized. There was a false start, if I do recall. Where are we today?
I think, like we mentioned, it's a gradual process. I know there's an expectation that we should get there faster and achieve that.
Speed of thought.
Yes, at speed of thought. But we are building not only the infrastructure, but we are also dealing with a lot of legacy systems, which is part of the challenges we are facing. And you have all these agencies that have their own various laws that give them powers to do certain things. So it's a gradual process. We are doing those harmonization, and we are eliminating silos by creating clusters, and eventually those clusters will merge up to become one whole single government approach in terms of data capturing and management.
Yes, Prof said the speed of thought.
Yes,
so
it has to be at the speed of
yeah, but
speed
people would
of thought.
appreciate to know that. For instance, we believe that by 2028, we would not be going around and duplicating
data everywhere.
Data everywhere.
Yes. So that actually, there was one, the chairman of the ADCOM. There's something he's talked about on trust, because you see, all this has some fundamental things that actually are the bedrock of your digital ecosystem. Now, if you look at why, like my friend Edith said, that people really don't trust anything government, it is not that they don't trust anything government. It's because, one, there's lack of awareness. For instance, when I started championing, you are aware about that government websites should be hosted by our data centers. You're aware of that. Today, Galaxy is the beneficiary of that, because I know a lot of MDS has moved to Galaxy data center. It's not Panasonic that is benefiting from it. But I talk these things from the perspective of an expert, knowing how these things work. So if we go to the area of trust, there are two aspects of trust, and we must underline those two aspects of trust. One is technical trust, and the other one is behavioral trust. So how you manage the technical trust and behavioral trust is very, very important. In terms of behavioral trust, citizens want to know that providers will handle their data more responsibly and act when there's even breach, and act responsibly. Now, on the technical side, you must have a foundation of how your data layers are protected. Like we have what we call the defense in-depth principle, whereby your data is your jewelry, should be the last thing. So before an attacker will move from several layers, before it gets into your data, it must have gone several hurdles. But you see, one of the gaps is that we are not building things based on certain principles. Like he said, every MDA is just doing whatever they like. So until we come, the key point is harmonization. let us build our infrastructures based on known best practices and ensuring that every player in this field, whether private sector or public sector, has a baseline of protection so that it will be difficult for intruders to penetrate. And even if intruders penetrate, how we respond is also another aspect of our protection, because response is very, very important. Responding and also recovery and ensure. So these foundations are very, very important, and we must build our data protection layers in such a way that the data, for instance, if there's exchange of data from NIDA to Galaxy, are they encrypted? If they are encrypted, does both data and Galaxy has the same key exchanges in a format that is actually transparent? So these are the things we need to build, because data exchange is another layer where data leaks. So we need to, up to today, some MTAs are still sending sensitive documents with WhatsApp, sending sensitive documents with Yahoo email or Gmail. So
recently we heard that even sensitive materials from the judiciary have been sent on WhatsApp.
Yes. So these things are very, very important. You know, harmonizing our data protection and then making sure that people actually adhere to these policies and guidelines is the responsibility of the regulators, because it's not just enough to put policy there without ensuring the conformance and the compliance. So it's very, very important.
That's a very valid point.
But let me just stay with you a while longer. You're in the academia, even though you've had experience outside that. So what are the partnerships that we can look at here between the government, the universities, the tech hubs, and research institutions as to develop homegrown solutions?
Thank you very much. I think, to be fair, there's a synergy that is coming up. There's some initiatives that are happening now in terms of collaboration between government and the academia. However, the private sector is not playing much part. Like the telecom, the telecoms, we prefer to promote big Nigeria. What do we call it? There's this big Nigerian something that's supporting initiatives to protect research in cybersecurity, for instance. And another gap, like I have said in Merifora, is that there are things that happen how the government, the public, the private sector, and the academia work. Okay, so the private sector is supposed to consume research. The government set the framework, okay, and then research in the institutions should be based on demand and supply. Now, what is happening in the academia today is that research is not based on demand and supply. You know, you just do a research and it ends up in the shelf, you know. And China today is harvesting a lot of research that has been done in the academia and trying to turn them into value. But we that have done this, most of them are residing on the shelf. So I would say something is being done, because State Fund is actually funding enormous research in the academia, but are those research add value? Do they add value? Do they have impact to our society? That's another thing, another discussion for another day.
Let me bring in Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, since you are not too pleased with the private sector.
Big brother. Big brother promotion.
So, yes.
Yeah, on the issue of promoting studies and research on data management, it goes without saying. That the repository of knowledge is actually our institutions, and the more we promote the institutions, the better for us as a country. Now, there is something else that I would like to mention, and that is on the consequence management for data breach and data compromise. Because when we talk about the issue of trust on our data, where we have the issue of compromise or breach, what's the address? What's the recourse for the victim? You've lost somebody has stolen your password, they've gone into your bank account, they've harvested all funds in your account. You go to the bank to complain. The bank will send you either to the chief imam or to the bishop. So go and complain to them. There is no recourse for losses. So, and this is when we talk about the integrity of data, integrity of where information is deposited, it's the kind of consequence that people expect that when certain things happen, what is the recourse for them? And I think this is a question that we must have. It's not something that we should gloss over, because today we don't address that. That seems like an open-ended thing, that there's a problem today. Who do you talk to? You've lost your data, you've lost valuable information, you've lost money, you've lost commerce. Who is the address? What is the consequence and what is the compensation for you? This seems to be open-ended today.
Well, you're the lawyer here, so is the Data Protection Act effective?
Yes, it is. Definitely it is effective. And again, one thing we have to, like we mentioned, I think he mentioned also, that one of the challenges is not being reactive, but more proactive. Because when you're being reactive in technology space, the damage has been done.
All right, let's just try and take this call in. Polycarp, we believe?
Okay.
Right. Polycarp from Abuja.
Taking light on my side.
Yes.
But what I want to say is I'm not much expert in what I don't know much. But I just believe that like the service providers like NTA, Glo, and other network providers, telecommunication companies, with the banks, I believe by now those who have their data ready in the banks and the service provider, that they should provide a platform that once you walk into the offices to do something, once you place your hand, like something like a scanner, the thing will be able to pop up your every information about you, and not you starting to fill forms and papers that will be thrown away again. That is much the area I think if something like that is available, that it would also improve the thing. But those in they know better. So, but I tell the people who are discussing this, that I have to wait up to this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Polycarp.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, that's the harmonization that we've been talking about. So you do not need to duplicate biometrics and all that everywhere. Sometimes these are even collected manually. And like Engineer Binga said, you might just end up finding sensitive material, your CV, everything, someone who's by roasted corn or wrapped in, akara, wrapped in.
Right.
So we were talking about the effectiveness of the Protection Act.
Yes.
And the consequences, because, yes, Engineer Adebayo has spoken of consequences twice now.
I actually agree with him. There are consequences. The Data Protection Act actually gives rights to certain citizens, or to every citizen whose data is being managed.
All right. Let me ask you to pause again. We have a Bello on the line from Abuja. Bello, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
All protocol duly observed. My first observation is that this topic is a topic that comes across both male, female, and youth. We have 5 big men on the panel without a single woman. Please, I feel your concern, seriously. Also the youth, because this topic you are treating, it's really, because especially if you talk of hacking or whatever, the youth are there. So I believe well, youth should also be part of that team, so that they will give us their own perspective, the youth perspective.
Okay.
Then concerning the topic, I want to ask now, as it is done in the developed country, if it is yes or no, is it possible for us to have a unified platform for this data? Is it safe? Just like as we have been, your panel have been discussing that we have a different platform. This NIN have its own, BVN have its own record, and this international passport also. So, but is it advantageous, or is it as it is done in other countries, that in developed countries that we can have a unified platform? Will that be more secure? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Just a quick comment here. We do appreciate your comments about gender sensitivity and the need for youth inclusion. However, I do sincerely hope that when you said when it comes to hacking, youth are there, I do sincerely hope that you're not by any means suggesting that Nigerian youth are hackers. I just wanted to get that clear out of the way. Yes. All right.
They are good hackers.
Okay, so perhaps the Galaxy Man can help us here. Okay.
Okay, so in terms of having security in one, I think Prof also did talk about how the current structure of even data being managed by the private sector. So you're accessing your Google, for example. It doesn't mean it's in Cupertino, California. The server, the data center they are hitting is probably could be in Hong Kong. You know, so there's a whole lot of disparate location. Distribution with regards to how the data is actually being managed. However, the reality is this. Again, we just come back to the fact that we're on a journey on our own part here. A lot of the data that we do have right now, many of the agencies that were collecting that data, they've seen the need to go beyond their own infrastructure to now move into more structured environments to keep that data for starters, and then to partner with specialized providers to ensure that they can structure that data properly, share it responsibly, you know, and ensure its privacy and security. So we're moving from a situation whereby data was just seen as anything that was accessible to anybody at any time. From now, it's now an asset, and it's now something to hold, you know, in trust. And you need to earn the trust of those who you are holding it for. So people, speaking from many of the government agencies that were collecting data before, they've moved that data from their own data centers, in many cases, to proper professional data centers in the first instance. They are now handling that data, you know, under some certain conditions as dictated by many of the extant guidelines that have already been put in place. So you see that there is a behavioral change. It's not yet at scale the way we want, which is what will lead us to see the kind of results that we want to see globally. But yes, we are beginning to see those early signs. Yes.
Well, John Orakwe, let's go back to where we started from. The matter of proactive rather than reactive. And many of the measures in place are seen as reactive. Hackers are everywhere. And even the best are having serious challenges, and Nigeria is not immune from this. And you've time and time again mentioned the attack on the CAC, and there are many more sensitive organizations that may just well be sitting ducks, if you like that term. So the proactive aspect that we talked about.
So being proactive will mean that they have, in some sense, they have, let's say, this millions of digital tripwires across their entire infrastructure, right? So what that will mean is that they have all of these, across all their digital assets, they have these invisible tripwires that monitor access and usage of all the data assets, right? So whenever there's an unauthorized attempt at getting into their database, these tripwires go off. So you can think of it like the tripwires we use to protect a house from over voltage, right, or too much current, as the case may be. So the eyes cannot see these tripwires, but they are there across the entire infrastructure. So whenever there's anything unauthorized, anything illegal, they are tripped. And typically, the way that any professional, any cybersecurity professional will respond to an incident is that they have to review like lots of data points. Okay. I do know that there's a particular bank, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Norway. They have this, trillions of digital tripwires. So whenever there's an attempt to hack their system, what instantly happens is that the agents that they have assigned to monitor their entire setup alerts the professional to, okay, there's been an attempt. So they narrow down from trillions of data points to 100,000 and maybe to 10,000 and then 100 viable cases.
Okay. Benson from Lagos is on the line. Hello, Benson. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
All right. So I wish to. There is a thing like I was watching the show at some. So I wanted to address the issue of hacking in general. Hacking isn't like a bad thing necessarily. It's a skill. It's a skill that people have.
Okay.
It depends on how we use it.
All right.
So what usually happens is that some of these outside business, some of these bigger companies like Google, Microsoft, they have what is called red teams. These are dedicated hackers that hack into their own systems. So this allows them to see from the attacker's perspective what to improve before the attackers get into their own system. So this is something I think these systems like the NIN, the NDC, NDFA should have, these systems should have, these banks should have. So because if you are able to detect it before your enemy is coming, you can patch those codes before it's coming, before they come in. So hacking is not necessarily a bad skill.
Okay.
It's just something that people have and how we use it.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, and we will just take it straight to the doorstep of the Group Head Research, Digital Innovation and Skills of Galaxy. So hacking is a skill. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Take us through that.
Yeah.
Right.
Hacking is so we have what we call ethical hackers. In fact,
Okay.
these are hired by companies to say, okay, check our system, go try to penetrate our systems to
see how
ensure
the
that
integrity
let's see
of-
how the integrity of our system. So
Right.
it's a skill, like you said. I mean,
Right.
there are those who are called they're white hat hackers. So they go around and they just ensure they work to see how impregnable your systems are and just to help strengthen your system. So yes,
Okay.
it's a skill and it's something that is an in-demand skill.
Right.
you
And
know, yeah.
on the other hand, you do have the unethical ones.
Oh yes, they're called the rogue actors,
Okay,
the bad actors.
yes.
And I mean, those are the kind that you don't want them to get into your system. They're the guys that you need the tripwires for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's all made a lot easier now by AI, Prof. Is that the double-edged sword? It is.
Yes, the AI is a double-edged sword. But let's also look at it from the ethical hackers and the bad guys. We need to understand what is the differentiator. The differentiator is that the ethical hackers work on bureaucracy. The bad guys, there's no bureaucracy.
No law.
No law. So it might take before an ethical hacker will defend, because they will call them the defenders, they have to go to certain protocols. The guy who is a bad guy, because they're using the same framework, it's the same tools both of them are using. But this guy tries out something without any protocol. So they act at the speed of thought. While the defenders act at the speed of light, if so to say. So if you look at the AI, like US, AI has amplified the issues in cybersecurity, and it's actually a double-edged sword. And we need to understand the intersection between AI and cybersecurity. AI is a software, and every software is as vulnerable as any other software. So the AI itself has vulnerability issues that has to be protected by the principles of cybersecurity. However, AI today helps also in protecting cybersecurity. The bad guys are using AI to automate their attack phases, and the defenders are also using AI to be able to defend by automating things. Like what Oracle said, so we call it indicators of attack. So the tripwires, we actually detect when there are anomalies in the system and flag up. And that is what we call proactive protection. And what it means is that every infrastructure we have, like in Nigeria, which is good enough, we have sectorial sets. All these sectorial sets should have this automated tripwire in their infrastructure so that they can proactively and actively in real time detect threats, because it's just like any sickness. There's no sickness that doesn't come with symptoms. So the indicators of attack give you the symptoms that somebody is interested. For instance, if you suddenly see too much scanning in your system that is unusual, that it means that somebody is interested. So you begin to now to narrow down by way of attribution. There are several ways people can scan without you knowing their location, But however, you need to put some puzzles together, because everything we're doing in cybersecurity is like a puzzle. So you need to bring pieces and pieces and pieces them together to be able to narrow down who are those who are interested in perpetuating those. So if we are really very, very proactive, it means that we have to use technical means to be able to protect our assets, as opposed to just only the regulatory aspect. Both of them. The regulation in cybersecurity is a deterrent. That's what we call it. They don't protect anything. They are reactive, yes. Regulation is so we need to understand all this. And both of them are very, very important, because when you have regulatory imperatives, the laws, they make somebody not to be able to commit a crime. But however, there are some who don't mind and commit a crime. So you need to be able to put both pari passu. So artificial intelligence, as we see it today, is the next monster we are going to see. There's a lot of nuances of things in AI, and I've said that you see a lot of people, almost everywhere today, people are talking about AI. But if we tell you the gamut of dangers in AI, we should know that AI adoption, we should handle it with care. Look at data poisoning. If you have used ChatGPT in Nigeria, right, go to UK and use ChatGPT. Ask the same question and see whether it will give you the same results. So there's what we call cultural bias. So the data they use are not the same data.
Now, this is interesting.
You see, they're not the same data. And this is why, you see, recently a professor was caught using his PhD candidate used AI to generate his thesis. And almost all the references were non-existent. All non-existent. So AI is a monster. And this is where we come again about data localization. Because the data you use in operating your AI model must have sanity, must have integrity, must be consistent, must be trusted. Then you have AI doing a work that is beneficial to the society, that will add value to the public. So without actually looking at those things, we will see that in the next 5 years, AI will be the greatest battle we are going to fight in the world. Thank you.
Engineer Adebayo.
Interesting, and I must thank Prof for his intervention.
Yes.
What this speaks to, you can imagine the amount of work that we are doing as network operators to keep the national network safe. You can imagine. It's not what we can say on public television, how much attempts players are seeing on their network at intervals, and what effort is going on to defend the national network against this incursion. So, and what that leaves us to is that we need to, as a people, not only develop skills in this new area of technology, we must also develop protection in the same area. And so I have a feeling that we need to also begin to think about mechanisms for protecting us in terms of against external incursion. I mean, it came to me now as Prof was speaking that while we do so much effort in data collection, data gathering, and data management, we also must do the same effort in defending the data that we have. We must build firewalls. We must be gathered to defend what we have. Otherwise, one incursion on our national database can be a problem. He who feels it knows it. Until there's a compromise, you don't know the implication of what you have. Just to give an example, just imagine today that something has gone wrong and I am calling you, your calls are going to somebody else. You are calling me, my calls are going to somebody else. If there has been a data break, that can happen. That myself and yourself, we are talking on a channel like this, and our conversation is received somewhere completely different from the platform on which we are connected. Those are things that can happen when there are data breaches. So I think as a country, we must not only develop these applications, we must also do enough effort, and more than enough, I would say, to protect the integrity of what we are building and what we have built. That's what I would like to say.
Okay, I'm back to John Orakwe. Are we acquiring the skills as quickly as we should? Because you wake up one morning and there are great advancements in all of this. What we are discussing tonight, by tomorrow morning there might be new angles to it. So are we developing the skills at that pace? Oh, dear, you may need to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yes. So I think we're making attempts to acquire these skills. And I say this because in April and May of this year, I was part of a program that helped some of the people within the CBN to appreciate AI and its dangers, to the degree that there was someone in banking services department that we showed how to cut down a 3-hour process down to about 30 minutes. Right. So I think that some really sensitive agencies, I think those that are aware of how fast the world is changing, are actively pursuing these new skills. And then the approach that they typically take is a train-the-trainer approach. So we light the fire to one person, and then they go into the organization and actually, spread that fire to the rest of the team. I do know that the CBN and Ministry of Finance have actively gone down this lane. And they have to do it because if you go to the US, for instance, when a particular model was launched by Anthropic, that's the Fable 5 model, there was an emergency meeting convened by the central banks of the US, Canada, and the UK, because according to them, these new AI models can actually spot zero-day vulnerabilities, which is that security risks that a human cannot even catch. These systems are spotting them. And then because of how fast the AI world moves, every 4 months, a model shows up that is far more capable than what already exists. So the deal is these people that's within the CBN and the Ministry of Finance, the people who have to deal with really sensitive sectors have to be aware of these things. And I know for sure that they are actively acquiring the skills to be ahead of the curve and regulate properly.
Yes.
So just going on that, right. One of the things that we've seen is the fact that typically when technology has been adopted, the general public goes ahead, and you find out that they're dragging the public sector, in terms of the demand for how that technology is being used. So one of the things that, when I talked about the 3 million technical talents, which is one of the programs of the ministry, right, which is one of the key things to say, how do we ensure that we have a talent pool within the country? On our own side, Galaxy Backbone, one of the things we've been doing is we have an AI readiness capacity building program, which we actually are on right now for the public sector, for public sector officials, not only at the federal level, but at the states level. Basically saying, how do we ensure that our public servants are empowered in this world of AI to understand what it means, to be able to utilize AI, to be able to spot, what they ought to be able to spot on their job, so that they are also at par, as we evolve in this world of AI. And one of the key things is to do that at scale. How do we scale that to cover, several millions of public servants? Because it's not enough to have it for pockets, in particular agencies. You need to have it at scale, empower your public servants so that they're able to actually serve, the general public who they're delivering services to. So, and that's the thinking that we are insistent on bringing to the table, because what AI represents, like Prof. said, it's actually a double-edged sword. It could be a monster, And it could be a massive opportunity. The people who have come out of retirement to say, oh, AI is such a wonderful opportunity and we just can't let it pass us by. So we need to see it for the opportunity it presents as well. And in doing so, look at how we can actually utilize it, maximize it. Of course, with all the attendant safeguards to make sure that how we're benefiting from it is actually drawing, the realizable benefits.
Something here.
Right, yes,
Okay.
bro.
So, in terms of MDAs, what AI agent are you using? Because you see, it is important to understand this, that the nation has to build their own AI agent.
Definitely.
Yes, we have.
Not relying on ChatGPT and all Gemini for government work. So you need under your own data set, build AI agents that civil servants will use for their work, rather than civil servants using ChatGPT and using this Gemini, because they, from what I have seen and what I have researched, there's a lot of bias that is going on with all this, and the more you are using them, they are profiling you.
Definitely.
They are profiling you. So, if for
instance,
your
data sets,
learning
from
your own data you are
GPT.
generating, and they are profiling you. So for us to actually responsibly and effectively use AI for the government, we need to develop our own AI agents.
We've done that.
Yeah.
Let me just
what's the name?
This is Service-Wise GPT.
Okay.
Service-Wise GPT.
We've done that.
There's service, and then there's the one for
Atlas.
Atlas.
Okay. So
I just wanted to say that. So should we be? He just talked about profiling from what you're generating.
Yeah.
Should there be worries about that?
Of course.
Yes, there should be.
Of course.
Yes, there should be. Because even before the advent of AI, or the full-blown advent of AI, your data personally describes your activity,
yes,
profiles you,
yes,
and for each free service that you subscribe to, your data is the currency you're using to pay for the service. And so you're being profiled. In fact, they know literally even much more than you know about yourself at some point. And magnify that 1,000 or 1,000,000 times with artificial intelligence, big data mining. So it becomes a great source of worry. And like Prof mentioned, the awareness needs to be there, because each data you upload into a public artificial intelligence engine is giving out things that should, in most times, not be available to those agents, especially if those documents are not publicly available. It's a different thing if those documents are released as part of public communications, but where you have sensitive documents and you upload them into artificial intelligence engines, it's a nightmare scenario. That's the best way I can describe it.
And that comes to what I'm trying to suggest, because, for instance, if a civil servant goes into an office and within the office network can access ChatGPT, so what are you telling me that you will stop him or her from using ChatGPT against the one you have developed? So there has to be proactive measures to ensure. For instance, if you enter China, you cannot use ChatGPT in China. Okay. And you think it is just more of censorship. Right. It is not censorship. Even EU today is stopping using AWS. They are making sure they don't use AWS. All the big tech companies that provides most of the services, because from these services, they also ghost data. So EU is building their own digital sovereignty today by limiting how they use all these big tech data providers. So we need to begin to look at it, because if you go to your office and from your office network, like NIDA network, a civil servant can access ChatGPT, then you are not guaranteed that your own agent, that is what is using for work. It can still use the ChatGPT to do the work. So
that's
a lot of
awareness comes in.
Not only awareness, strict conformance is important, because humans are very difficult to deal with. Human behavior cannot
So
really
who
be
drives
trusted.
this awareness, and what is the solution? We would like to spend the next 5 minutes or so as we begin to wind down on looking at 2027. When I say 2027, I'm not referring in any way to the political scenario. I'm just saying, a year from now, what should citizens look at for and expect? Even as Prof suggested, uh, uh, as we think about building our own systems, to make sure that, particularly in government agencies, MDAs, these risks are mitigated.
I think what we should expect is a better outlook in terms of using technology to deliver government services. I know Galaxy is working on services.gov.ng, which is a single service portal for government agencies. So we're looking at where not only are we going to cut costs and savings in terms of coordinated procurement as far as digital technologies are concerned through the NIDA IT clearance process, but we are also going to look at a system where we are going to have a lot of harmonization in terms of trying to have a single portal where you can access government services. That's number one. Number two, we expect better awareness as we continue to reap the initiative, reap the benefits of the initiative that government is embarking on or has been embarking on over the years, like the access to networks, also issues around creating a local economy as far as innovation is concerned. We are also promoting that. We've done a lot of research in AI, and we are moving forward with that. So these benefits will cascade into an economic, a better economic outlook for Nigeria.
Why? Your closing comments in 60 seconds.
My closing is, one of the takeaways from this particular conversation today is data harmonization that should be treated with speed of thought, and ensuring software sovereignty is also important. Data sovereignty is also important. I think that's my takeaway.
If you can do it in less than 60 seconds.
All right, so yeah, I'll just piggyback on what Emmanuel said about the government service portal, which acts as the single window by which you can access government's digital services, which we had a soft launch recently in Galaxy Backbone, and we expect agencies and ministries to actually onboard their services on that platform, enabling citizens to actually consume those digital services. And as we go ahead, it will scale, and many more people will be able to get the benefits of government's digitalization programs and processes over that platform.
All right. Chairman Alton, Engineer Gbenga Adebayo.
Yeah, just to assure the public that the network operators will continue to build more capacity to provide better services across the country. We're injecting more in terms of backbone, we're injecting more in terms of availability of services and deepening access to services. And in 2027, we hope to do a lot more, not only to cover the black spot, but to ensure that services are better available and they're also more affordable.
Thank you so very much. And then John Orakwe.
Okay, so I do know that the approved AI tool for a lot of government establishments at this point in time is, Copilot, right? So something I've seen is a lot of these agencies are now trying to maximize the use of the licenses because they pay for it annually, but they don't know how to maximize it yet. So I think that by 2027, we would have got to the point where a lot of them are doing more with the
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks to you both for being on this program. I always say that no one program can capture all the issues. We might extend this conversation sometime in the future, but again, back here in the studio in Abuja, let me say thank you to Kintayo Ayodele Bamishai, the Group Head, Research, Digital Innovation and Skills, Galaxy Backbone.
Thank you very much.
You so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Uche Mbanaso, Professor Cybersecurity, Computing and AI, Computer Science Department, the Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you so much, Emmanuel Edet Squire, Acting Director, Regulations and Compliance Department, NIDA. We appreciate your
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And so thank you too for being part of this. Next week, We'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.
Although social media as a channel of communication